It is Thursday, which means one thing. It means it's time to catch up with Niko Moreno, our friend from Pulso Sports. First and foremost, how big is the cup of coffee, and which cup of coffee are you currently on?
Oh, this is my second cup of the day, and this is my 16-ounce cup. I had a much bigger one earlier today. It's probably 24-ounce, that first one. So that tells you how my day has gone. It was a late night after the Sounders game, and I must have been up till about maybe 2:30, watching a couple of games, and I was putting a little bit on there the weather as well. So it, it, it I don't know, for some reason, instead of the medicine putting me to bed, it just wouldn't let me go to sleep. So I said, hey, let's put on some of the MLS action, because there was a lot of action. And just watch the some of the games. I like to watch not just the highlights, but actually the real game. So watch a couple of the games from last night, and man, it was good.
And we'll get into that. I guess first and foremost, let's start with on this side of the planet. It is MLS After Dark, but on your side of the planet, big crowd at Lumen for Seattle and CF Montreal, soon to be Impact all over again, once again like they were before. And Mason Toye gets a goal on the board, and it was one of the four West Coast teams that was a favorite, and not all of them came out on top. What was your takeaway from CF Montreal and Seattle?
Well, you got to start by giving Montreal a lot of credit. They are an excellent team, very well coached, disciplined as they can be. They went into this game without their MVP candidate, in Hogovic, and they looked like it's not that they didn't need him, but they just continue to look systematically sound. It was a dysfunctional Sounders team, especially the first half, had so much ups and downs. You start the game off by exploding the space and the one-on-one coverage that they were giving Jordan Morris because of their high press, because of the way they move numbers forward, and that's how Seattle gets that first goal. Is a quick transition. Christian finds Jordan. Jordan, gets behind the defender, then puts it away. And you feel like Seattle is going to continue to do that, because they were having a hard time building out of the back, because, once again, Montreal is such a good high-press team. But then all of a sudden, Seattle stopped trying to go with the long ball and continue to build out of the back and continue to struggle. And I think there were some adjustments. I asked Brian Smetzer about why they didn't continue to just, bomb balls behind Jordan Morris and not allow Montreal to just pin him back as they did. And he didn't really have an answer for it. He said, man, it could have been an adjustment. It was just the way the game played out. He said goals change games, and Seattle gets caught with Jackson Reagan trying to dribble out of the back. He gets dispossessed of the ball. That leads to a goal, a mistake. And I think that did affect the team's form and confidence throughout the game. And then Montreal just kept on pushing. Once again, you got to give them a lot of credit. Brian tried to do a lot of changes, a lot of substitutions. But I did not think that they had the fluidity that they usually do. I think Kellen Rowe is a very good grinding player, but sometimes for the Sounders to work well, you need that holding mid pivot to do a lot. And Albert Rostock was trying to get things done, but he was getting some heavy marking and was not allowed to really get into his game. And then Kellen, who was given a little bit more space, just didn't have the quality to do certain things. So it was just a good game by Montreal and a very dysfunctional game on the Sounders side.
I know that there was a bit of a concern. I think was Javier Arriaga, who had a bit of an injury concern. Is there any update on that?
Yes. So a lot of injuries and a couple of safety and health protocols. For one, Javier Arriaga, he continues to be in his rehab. I would not expect him back until the Timbers game here at home. So at least one more week out. Brian Smetzer ruled out. Will Bruin, who just got into safety and health protocol, and Josh Atencio, who could be back for this game on Saturday, but he was out for this one. Then you got Raul Ruidiaz, who is also out, and I would not expect him back until that Portland game. So definitely a lot of injuries combined with Obed Vargas, who, with that stress lower back injury, you still don't know when he'll be back, and JP, who's out for this season. So a lot of hits for this team, and that's why they are trying to figure it out. I would not be surprised if the team continues to struggle in that holding mid piece. If they don't go try to find something, it's just very difficult to do because you already got a couple of guys who you want to continue to work with, right? You got your MVP candidate at times, last year and when healthy, a key player in JP, in Joe Paulo. And then you got your bright young star in Obed Vargas. So you don't want to get you don't want to sign a player that's going to come in and not be a regular. So I do think that if they assess the situation and that Obed might not be back this year for some reason, then they could potentially go out there and get somebody. But I think a lot of some of the dysfunction that you saw yesterday happened in that holding midfield. So it'll be something to look at.
Something that kind of sounds familiar with what we're going through with Atlanta United. We were doing the numbers, Jarrett and I, and 17 players of 35 or 6 that have been a part of the roster this year have had some kind of injury, either short-term or long-term or season-ending. So definitely can understand where you're coming from when you're talking about.
Oh, no. Atlanta's in a whole other level. I mean, you guys are just you guys got the plague. I mean, it's just a monster. I can't remember a team get hit as hard as you guys have this particular season, man. I feel for you. I feel for Gonzalo.
All right, let's look at some of the other MLS After Dark stuff, and I want to go to Minnesota United and the LA Galaxy for a couple different reasons. And first and foremost, where Minnesota United actually showed up, and you have Baby Reynoso scoring twice. You got a third one on the board. It was 3-0 at the break, and I think that was one of the more stunning 45-minute results. Then things get chaotic, and Galaxy get one back down a man, and we'll get into the Kevin Cabral bit here in just a little bit, but down a man, then Douglas Costa gets a red. There's a goal scored later than late to make it 3-2. What did you think of Minnesota United and LAG?
It was a good game. I enjoyed it. I love to watch Bebelo Reynoso when he is fully vested in the game. I think that he could be someone who picks and chooses certain games, to be quite frank, or that's the way it seemed. He's so talented that's kind of like the only logical explanation to how he plays at times. But when he's on, and he was last night. I'm talking about distributing the ball, his movement off the ball, the finishing skills. I mean, he did it all last night, and he is the epicenter of every good and solid attack that Minnesota has. He needs to be at his best for this team to be elite, and I thought he was last night. Did LA perhaps give them a lot of space, and did they lack a lot of defensive pressure and allowing him and others in the flanks to just have all the space in the world to just kind of get to the end lines and do a lot of things they did yesterday? Yes. Did Javier Hernandez have a couple of chances he could have put away? Yes. But you got to give Minnesota credit for just sticking with it. Like you said, for a second, he seemed like you were going to go back to the old Minnesota that was going to be unable to hold the result. And I think I'm not a huge Trap fan, but I thought he had a good game yesterday. Maybe not statistically, but just the way he was covering space, the way he was kind of keeping things together. I thought Fragapane, who is not usually a guy that is known for the defensive part of it. He was putting a lot of effort yesterday and really doing a good job at covering Cabral at times. So I think the effort was there yesterday. I think that it just shows you a little bit of what this Minnesota team can do. And on the other side, the LA Galaxy just continue to be a very unbalanced team at times. In the back end, I mean, Raheem Edwards is literally the only guy who I really trust defensively on that team, and even he had some issues yesterday. That a pivot holding midfield, the center defensive midfields, Delgado was good, and he just ran out of gas. It seemed at one point, but this team is just not deep enough, and you could see it in the games, and you could see it, and you saw that last night.
Would you hang on to Douglas Costa for the remainder of this season, or would you try to find a way to give him some exit papers? Because he comes in the 60s, lasts about 30 minutes, gets a red card, and it's just there seems to be negative returns where Douglas Costa is concerned, and I would think that the resources that the Galaxy have or can draw upon could be better used in other places, especially with the window opening on July 7th.
Absolutely. The problem is who's going to take him, and who's going to take him for, any sort of reasonable amount of money. It's just difficult. It was just a swing and a miss. It was something that this scouting squad should have seen coming, and they didn't. He hasn't fit in. He hasn't been productive. He hasn't been healthy. And once again, yesterday, the red card, it just doesn't seem to be a guy that is gonna provide your team the tools to succeed. I'm not sure if it's not an adaptation thing either. Like you could make a lot of arguments for certain players and say, hey, they're just not adapting to the league. But it just feels like a guy that's just out there doing his own thing, playing for Douglas Costa and not for the squad. So yeah, if you ask me, you send them packing, but I just don't see in a scenario where a team would take them. I thought that Minnesota was so much better than the LA Galaxy yesterday, and no matter what Greg Vanney tried to do off of the bench, if it wasn't for an opportunistic goal and very short lapses of time during the game, this team just didn't seem cohesive. So yes, you try to move Acosta and bring someone else. That would be the best scenario, but I don't think that you will be able to. So now the pressure's on you to try to go find talent to make what you have right now available work.
Kevin Cabral is signed to a $3 million contract as a DP, 16 matches, and he's got more red cards than he has points, goals, and assists. I guess first and foremost, would you have given the red in that situation for Cabral with the contact with Dane St. Clair?
That's a tough one. It's a tough one because I get that you want to protect the keeper, and as a player, you should know that. So, was it? Could you call it soft? And that's once again a very subjective word. Yeah, I understand it. I think that at first look during the game, I would have definitely probably gave that, and only because that's what you want to do. You want to be able to protect the keeper, and that's just kind of what kind of played out there.
I could have given a yellow just because of the fact it was contact and you're trying to protect. But since Cabral was jumping over Dane St. Clair, not looking down, looking past him, he's past the incident, and it just the boot comes and hits St. Clair in the backwash as he's going over the top. I could see it as a yellow just because it's contact with a player, but I don't see it as a red because of because it's all the way past what you were looking for. So I could definitely see a card, but I think that changed the tenor of the match. And Greg Vanney got a yellow for his troubles because he was just as stunned as everybody else. Jarrett and I talked about it earlier this morning, where Vanney didn't realize that Cabral had gotten a red until Cabral is walking off the pitch, and he's like, "No," he's like, "I'm done for the night." And then Vanney goes nuts and gets a yellow for his trouble. It just seemed to change the tenor of a match that we all thought was going to be heading one way and it ended up going the other.
No, right. It was deservingly so. I could see, especially as a head coach, where you're kind of hoping to get back into this game, and now this happens and just kind of changes it all out. But once again, I realized that it wasn't a flagrant foul. It wasn't something that you would expect to be a direct red. But I could also make the point that the contact was there, and by the rule and regulation, you could give the red card. So it's a gray area. I guess you would call it soft, but I'm not too upset at it, though.
All right, let's take a peek at two of the matches in the eastern part of the world where it was before dinner and you're having craziness yesterday. And we were looking at the numbers in the juice boxes. And if you played the over at 7.5 goals for FC Cincinnati and NYC, that was a plus 36.50. To come up with a plus 7.5, the overs plus 36.50. They went to 8. And the match itself, I think, maybe set the tone for the midweek matches, that it was just absolutely half past crazy and went full crazy by the time it was done without Tati Castellanos.
Yeah, no, it was I don't know. It was exciting. It was fun. And I had to watch the game last night. I ended up watching the whole thing because at the moment I was when it was live, I was watching the Orlando against Nashville Open Cup game. But going back to this one, it was fun. I love that you put a lot of goals, but the defensive effort on both ends was just atrocious. I mean, it was bad. Look, credit to Brenner. If anybody needed a 3-goal day, that could have probably been 4, because he got a couple brought back because of VAR, and I think one of them the ball goes out of bounds. But man, I mean, it's worrisome. So let's start with New York City SC. They've already dropped the ball at Philadelphia, and you could see that perhaps that loss in the last minute could affect the momentum of the team, and it's a rivalry game and everything that went on. And now you go and you get absolutely stumped by Cincinnati in the first 35 minutes of the game, and they were just shredding the defense of New York with no problem. I haven't seen Alexander Kajins that out of sorts. I can't remember the last time he was like that. Chanel wasn't great. I thought Acevedo was showing a lot of lack of field awareness throughout the game. And Cincinnati had all sorts of space. So really concerned about what you could see from New York City on that end. And on the other side, once Cincinnati is having such a good game and they're still unable to hold on to that lead, it shows you that they're probably not a true contender. And probably nobody's thinking that, right? I mean, they're over the playoff line and they are much better than they have been over the last couple of years. They have a lot of quality. Lucho Costa and Brandon Vasquez and Brenner finally coming to what they hope he could be. But you cannot have this sort of lead and not be able to manage it either through possession and just kind of putting your own tempo into the game, or just parking the bus and trying to just hold it in. Once that goal by Talis Magno came in, even though I think Maxi had a PK and they were able to stop it. Once that Talis Magno goal came through, there should have been some adjustments, and you should have tried to held on to at least that first half, not allow any more goals. But you allowed New York City to get back into it in that first half. Yes, there was 5 minutes of overtime in that first half and all, but the miscommunications, the lack of mentality and awareness by Cincinnati was incredible. This back three is atrocious for Cincinnati. From Cameron to Blackett, I mean, man, they were god awful yesterday. So it was fun. I loved it. I thought it was, everybody loves to see goals. I like to see a little bit of defense, and in this one, there was no signs of it.
The other one that I wanted to get into before we go to the weekend that will be, we were looking at the juice boxes for this one, and it was Chicago and Philly. Philly, when we did the show yesterday, was a plus 200. Chicago was a favorite at like plus 147, under plus 150. Philadelphia was a plus 200. It ended up like plus 185. We were running to the pay window going, Philly, Philly, Philly at plus 200. You have to do this. And we were proven once again, Jarrett and myself, that we know absolutely nothing about setting lines in Major League Soccer, because Philly laid an egg. Against Chicago, they laid an egg.
Yeah, man. That one was probably the most surprising scoreline of the day. I mean, Chicago has won 4 games all season, and 2 of those against DC United. So the fact that they were able to beat a very good and sound and perhaps in a great state of mind Philadelphia team was actually kind of cool. I mean, seeing Ezra Hendrickson get that win and how excited they were, and Navarro, who I really like, and I think he's one of the few standout players in Chicago at the time. He gets a score, and it just seems like it's all great for Chicago. But yes, definitely Philadelphia lays a goose. They did not find the same sort of clinical and finishing skills that they had shown at times with Ure and the rest of this front line. El Brujo Martinez gets sent off, and he'll be off for the next game. But give credit to Chicago. They grinded it out. They surprised everybody. But yes, that it was, for me, the most shocking result of this midweek games, and that's with the 4-4 in Cincinnati versus New York City FC. So yeah, definitely.
Niko Moreno, Pulso Sports, hanging out with us, looking at the midweek that was and looking at the weekend that will be. And it starts for Atlanta United fans. It starts tonight with a game against Red Bulls, and then this weekend in the U12 pitch at Yankee Stadium going up against NYC SC. And Jarrett, who worships at the altar of his dear Tati Castellanos, maintains that NYCFC has not been the same since Ronnie Dyla left. For Atlanta United, it is a match against Red Bulls where they have 3 still in health and safety protocols, as far as we know, with Long and Lucchinius, 2 of those 3. Jason Pendon, I think, is the 3rd. Then 6 players out, including, I want to say, Dylan Nealis, because he's out on yellow card accumulation. Caden Clark is away on international team duty. I maintain keep an eye on Carlos Coronel because he went down in the second half of the match against LAFC, got some treatment on his hamstring. LAFC scores 2 goals shortly thereafter. Maybe we see Ryan Mera as a rotation. The games for Atlanta United, with everything that we talked about with them, with all of the injuries and the lineups that we're seeing, it's an interesting set of challenges. But I will maintain that points can be had in both of those matches in New York this week.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, we can't say it's really a catch game because New York is, fourth in the standings, but they do have a very limited roster at the time. Atlanta, I think that despite everything they've gone through, can definitely get some points out of this one. They've had their absences for a longer period of time, and they've been able to manage it. I think New York Red Bulls might not be ready for this one. I'm starting to see a little bit of Joseph Martinez kind of getting into a groove. Luis Araujo could really stretch out this New York Red Bulls defense. So I think this would be a good game for Atlanta to get some points.
Let's take a peek in. All right, let's play cliffhanger like we've done in the past, and I will go through the remaining matches for the weekend. And if there's somebody that you sit there and it's like, I want to talk about this one, you yell stop. We will stop and we will go over it. The other match tonight, Charlotte and Austin. Charlotte's a plus 123 at home as Verde Listos hits the road. That's a 7 o'clock Eastern time start. That gets us to the weekend. And since July 4th is on Monday, that means going backwards. The 3rd is Sunday and the 2nd is Saturday. 2 games on Saturday, including the Seattle Sounders, front and center for you, but they've got to go from one end of the world to the other to take on Toronto FC. That one's at 7:30 on Saturday night. Then LAFC goes to play Vancouver at BC Place. That one's at 10 o'clock on Saturday night. And we got 8 matches on Sunday. NYC Atlanta United, we talked about that one. Crew hosting Philadelphia. The Revs hosting FC Cincinnati. Minnesota United, can they keep it going under the newly minted contract of Adrian Heath with RSL? Sporting and Red Bulls, Houston and Charlotte. That's a quick turn for Charlotte going on Thursday to Sunday. Nashville hosting Portland. San Jose hosting Chicago.
That one. I like the Nashville Portland game. I think that's going to be a really interesting one. I think Portland is starting to get their groove back as well. I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing out of Sebastian Blanco. Kind of coming back to that vintage Sebastian Blanco. Nashville coming from a heartbreaking loss in a U.S. Open Cup. I think is going to want to put it all into this game against Portland.
Into penalty kicks. Never get Orlando in the PKs because they are unbeaten if you get to PKs with Orlando. Don't take it that far. That's the bottom.
And they played well. Nashville had that game locked down. It was one mistake in literally the last play of the game. Panico just completely misses the ball. I don't know how. I watched the replay like 4 times, and I had no idea how he misread that ball. It seemed like a gimme ball, and just totally misses. Allows Orlando to equalize, and it was all downhill from there. But I really do want to watch that Portland game. Mukhtar and Leal and CJ Sapong against this Portland the midfield as well. I think there's going to be a really interesting one, and I think it's going to really tell you where Portland is right now. I think this is a good game for Portland to challenge themselves and see if they have enough to begin to climb up the standings and get into playoff position.
Chicago's at San Jose, which gives you MLS After Dark on a Sunday night in San Jose. That one will be interesting, I think, for a bunch of different reasons. Going to your July 4th games, DC at Orlando City, Austin at Colorado, Inter Miami and FC Dallas, which will be interesting. And then the last one on the board, LA Galaxy, CF Montreal, late night, July 4th in Los Angeles. That one should be an interesting one, too.
Yeah, that should be a good one. I mean, once again, I think Montreal, if you have not figured out that Alfred Nancy and this Montreal team is a force to be reckoned with, now that they're, leading the Eastern Conference, then you don't know what's going on. I mean, they have the most wins out of the East. They are as balanced as they come. They have a lot of quality and experience from their back line to the midfield. They can stretch you out. They can frustrate you by high pressing you, and then if they need to play deep, then they play deep. So yeah, that game against LA will be fun to watch, but I got to tell you that if I'm putting my juice boxes anywhere, it's going to be on Montreal's end, because I don't see LA having enough to beat this Montreal team.
Montreal right now, after midweek, top of the table in the East. They've won 9 of the first 17 matches in the season, 9-2-6, 29 points. They've won 3 of 4. Philadelphia, they've only scored 22 goals so far this season. Yes, they're at a +9, but they've only won 7, and they've only scored 22. With CF Montreal having 9 wins, 32 goals so far this season. All right, Niko, time for the promo. What's going on at Pulso Sports that folks need to be keeping an eye on?
Pulso Sports, we are going to be having another roundtable this coming up week, perhaps Thursday. We are going to have, we usually do like a Spanish, the voices of MLS, but we're all bilingual, and we all really enjoy that ability to be bilingual. So our plan is to have a roundtable with those usual suspects, John Rojas, Felipe Cardenas, a couple of the other guys that we typically bring on, but we're going to do it in English this time. I've gotten a couple of messages from some of our listeners and subscribers from our YouTube channel that they would like to see more of that analytic debate roundtable situation, but in English. So we are working on it. We still have to get a couple of yeses from some of our participants, but this should be happening this next Thursday.
El Rolo in W on the Twitters at Pulso Sports as well. It is Thursdays with Niko and his second cup of coffee. Both of them have been very, very large. Niko, my friend, it's always great to catch up with you. We will catch up with you next week where we can continue to talk about the madness that is Major League Soccer.
All right, my man. You have a good one.